most recognisable guitar riffs, and it comes from an iconic track played live to tens of thousands of people at one of the world's most famous venues.
Devil Inside from INXS's sixth studio album, Kick. Tim Farriss is the guitarist who brought the track to life on and off the stage, and he joins us this Vinyl Friday. Tim, it's so nice to talk to you.
Same, thanks for that. You know, that was kind of cool hearing that little bit, that riff right there. You know, that's one of my favourite riffs to play, that one.
Oh, that's brilliant. What do you love about it?
It's just a powerful riff, and actually that version live at Wembley is actually my favourite. I like it better than the album version.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, what does vinyl mean to you? You know, when we talk about it, we just played vinyl then.
Yeah, it's incredible. It just sounds different. It sounds warm. It's got a sensitivity to it and a luster that you just don't get from too much digitisation, you know.
I saw INXS at the Charles Hotel when I was young, and I thought it was Inks. I was one of those people that hadn't worked out the wordplay at the time.
No, well, you know, actually we were called Inks. We just decided someone smart came along and said, why don't you call it INXS? Yeah, go on.
Oh, no, God, you had me for a sec. I thought...
You did. That was brilliant, Tim.
So what are your memories of the early days?
Oh, look, such fond memories of playing Sunday sessions in Perth, and you know the herdsmen, and I mean, just we had such a great and fond memories of playing the Perth Entertainment Centre as well, one of my favourite venues in the world. But, you know, the early days here in Sydney too on the northern beaches were fantastic. And then, you know, years and years of touring the US and Europe in tour buses and then private planes and jets and the whole bit. We just seemed to be on the road for forever. It was relentless. But looking back, that's what you did, that's what we did, you know, and plus we got really good at it.
How do you get good at touring?
Pack heavy.
Because but that's the gruelling part of what you do. I mean, that's what people find difficult.
Yeah, it is, and we found it difficult too. But having said that, when you're doing really big shows, there's someone to do everything for you. You know, they take away a lot of the grueling stuff is taken away. It's the travelling and the airports and that. So that's why you end up in private planes, so you don't have to go through customs and immigration with everybody else. You just get off the plane and into a limo and they take you to your hotel.
That's what they mean when they say rock star. That's exactly what they mean. You know, to get big, you had to start small. What can you remember the very first time you heard one of your songs on the radio? Yeah,
I do actually. I do remember that. At the time we first heard ourselves on the radio, it was on the ABC, but the real big excitement came when we first heard ourselves on the radio in the US, only because, you know, it was like starting over again in 1983 when we went over to the US, and we weren't sure, you know, what was in store for us. But when we heard ourselves on the radio over there, it was like, wow. And then you turn on the television, and we were on high rotation on MTV. So it was pretty exciting.
Do you remember what the songs were? Well, the song that you first heard on ABC Radio?
Yes, we were still called the Farriss Brothers.
Yes.
and I think it was a song from our first album, and it might have been the song Love in Vain.
Beautiful.
And that would only have been released on vinyl too.
It's perfect that we're talking.
And we'll still have it somewhere, Tim.
You're listening to Vinyl Friday on ABC Radio Perth. Nadia and Southwest Russell Wolf with you, and how chuffed are we to have a local lad done good. Tim Farriss, a founding member and guitarist with the band INXS. Always a good live act. Some people dread taking their show from the studio to the stage. It doesn't seem to be a concern for you.
Well, the thing about that was we played a lot live before we went into the studio properly. And then it became the problem that all our producers seemed to have was that we didn't seem to sound as good in the studio as we did live, which, you know, Chris Thomas, the legendary producer, he came and saw us the first time we were playing with the Pretenders in Dallas, Texas. And he saw us there, and then he came and saw us in Tokyo in Japan, and then he saw us at the Palladium in Los Angeles. And that was when we had the final chat about going into the studio to record Listen Like Thieves, and he said, look, my main thing here is going to be try and get you guys to sound like you do live in the studio. So he put a PA in the drum room, and he had us just play and play and play all at once. So most of our recordings we'd try and record as a band instead of individually. Then after lots of albums later, it became more of trying to get our studio sound live, which was not necessarily the right way to go about it, because we were a naturally live band. It was always fun to separate them and in a way, enjoy both aspects.
Give us a bit of a look behind the scenes, because you spent so much time together, travelling so much. Did you always get on?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the thing that blew us away about touring with Queen, was the guys in Queen were all mates and friends as well. So, like, when we were touring with them, they'd ask us out for dinner, to join them for dinner, and it would just be them and us. It warmed our hearts, because it was nice to see another band that were close like we were. And there were a few bands like that we met, of course, but not many, I tell you.
Well, and you don't have to name any band names, but if you want to, you can. But do you? what were the ones? Do you have experiences that weren't like that made things difficult?
Well, yeah. Well, just lots of bands where, for instance, they'd all turn up individually and have their own dressing rooms, and they would see each other just before they went on stage. Which we were like, wow, how can these guys actually exist like that? Turned out it was very commonplace, which is sad.
Tim Farriss is our guest on Vinyl Friday this morning. Tim, I remember so well the day Michael Hutchence died. I was actually in London, and I loved you, and I was actually in America in 1988, and you were huge then because Kick was massive. But I don't think I fully appreciated how big a band globally you were until that day in London and that outpouring of grief and shock. But I can't imagine what that was like for you.
Yeah, well, I'll never forget it, that's for sure. We were at the ABC rehearsing for our first tour in 8 years, so... it was, what can you say? We all went into shock. Well, I did, I started hyperventilating. We were sitting there in the studio waiting for Michael to show up for the next day's rehearsal. I think it might have been the last day's rehearsal too. So, something I'll never forget. But, then that was a zoo as well, to be honest. The aftermath of that, with the funeral and everything, it was, and the amount of world attention that got, I had to, immediately my house was under siege from media and whatnot, so I went to my country place to get away from everything in Kangaroo Valley and laid out in the middle of a paddock and just screamed at the sky.
Tim, we are so much better at talking about issues related to mental health than we were in 1997. Do you wish that the times had been different back then?
Well, not really. I don't like to look back and wish things were different too much. It's good. I think it's important to learn from history, but not so much regret it. That's a dangerous path to go down. But I'm so pleased that people are more able to talk about mental health these days, and a lot of the it has been shrouded in stuff, but these days people are much more open to it, and that's such a good thing. But there's, of course, I wished, we all as a band all wished we'd gone back to Michael's room that night and hung out with him, but we weren't to know. So it's just one of those things.
Tim, the band then tried to not replace Michael. That's not something you could ever achieve. But looking at ways that you could move forward, and they did a reality television show was one of the things. I'm not sure if you're settled on an idea for what will work for INXS into the future and how you will perform live. Is it something that you've worked out or worked on?
It's something we still think about, but that doing that show in the States, the shame of if I had one thing that I do regret was that it didn't get on Australian, local television. It was on, some obscure pay for when in the States, in Canada,
Yeah.
it was on the equivalent of the highest rotating commercials television station, and it was the number one show in its demographic, and it was massive there. It won the ratings and was this incredibly popular show, and it was really out of the box for us to do that particularly me, because I was the guy that sort of hired or fired everybody. We worked really hard on that show, and the whole exercise was really, really fun and good for the band. We weren't trying. You're right. We weren't trying to replace Michael. We were just, if anything, we were trying to do his legacy, and show the world that he was not irreplaceable. And that album that we made, that Switch album, is to this day one of my favourite INXS records. So, we wrote some really good songs for that, and we tried to do a lot of things differently, which is what we've tried to do all our career, really.
Tim, will you perform again?
I perform every day. Look, I think so. I won't rule it out. When the planets align, if they align up right, sure.
I'll rephrase the question. Would you like to perform again?
Yes, I certainly would. I'll have to leave it at that, though.
Tim Farriss, we're very proud of you and your brother John. And I mean, I always call INXS a Perth band. I always say that, and we love you, mate. And to be able to have you as a guest on Vinyl Friday is so special for us. Thank you for your time.
It was